stop that bus. Thomas the Tank Engine loves working on his branch line with Annie and Clarabelle, and knows it very well. Bertie the bus loves carrying passengers along the route of Thomas's branch line to Farquhar. He always loves racing with Thomas. Thomas loves racing with Bertie too, but he knows that the passengers were never like that, and neither were Annie and Clarabelle. One day, Thomas was taking on water on Farquhar before his last run back down the valley. Bertie came to see him. He was cross. "Thomas, why is it that you don't want to race with me anymore?" "Well, I love to race with you, Bertie," replied Thomas, "but I didn't want to upset my passengers. They don't like to be bounced around like balls in a bag, and Sir Topham Hatter warned me not to race at dangerous speed. He's worried that I might cause an accident. He told me that the passengers are more important than racing." Annie and Clarabelle agreed, but Bertie didn't. "You know, Thomas, I don't think you're bothered," he said crossly. "If you don't love racing with me, then I am not your friend any more. Goodbye." And he roared away. "Bertie, wait! I didn't mean that," called Thomas. But Bertie had gone, and he didn't hear Thomas. Thomas was upset. "I was only making up a reason," he huffed. "Cheer up, Thomas," said Annie. "He should agree with you," added Clarabelle. "Thank you," said Thomas, but he was not so sure. But for the rest of the day, Thomas tried to make up the reason with Bertie. But Bertie was still cross with Thomas, so he took no notice and refused to speak to Thomas. That night, Thomas was in the shed with Lady. Lady could see that Thomas was unhappy. "What's wrong, Thomas?" asked Lady. "Have you just had one of those days today, dear?" "I haven't, Lady," replied Thomas. "It's just that Bertie's not friends with me anymore." And he told Lady everything about it. "Don't be upset, Thomas," smiled Lady. "I'm sure Bertie will understand about racing safely." Thomas felt better. The next day, Bertie was at Farquhar Station. He had to take the football team to Dry FC to practice for their big game. But they were running late, and Bertie had to wait. Then Thomas arrived with Annie and Clarabelle. "Bertie, I know you're cross with me, but I'm only saying about her safety." "I'm not staying here to talk to you, Thomas," said Bertie crossly, "until you are racing with me again." Before Thomas could answer, Bertie drove away and forgot about the football team, who had just arrived to take the bus ride. "Bertie, come back!" yelled the coach. "Cinders and ashes!" cried Thomas. "Bertie left the team behind!" screamed Annie. "And they and the coach are going to be late for the big game!" panted Clarabelle. "What are we going to do?" "All right, calm down," Thomas comforted his coaches. "We don't have time to waste all this." "Thomas," said the coach, "go and stop that bus!" And Thomas raced after Bertie. Thomas caught up with Bertie, and he tried to call out for it to him. "Bertie, stop!" Bertie heard Thomas, but he thought that Thomas was finally coming to race with him. "Catch me if you can, Thomas!" he called. "Oh no!" panted Thomas. "Bertie thinks I'm racing with him." "Well, I think you're not, Thomas," grunted Annie.
We're catching up to Bertie,
said Clarabelle. Thomas knew that his coaches were right, and he was still puffing along the line towards the tunnel, chasing after Bertie. I'm gonna win, Slow Coach, hooted Bertie. There was trouble ahead on the other side of a tunnel beside Terrence's field. The workmen were mending the road. George, the steamroller, was waiting for the tar to fill the road so that he could flat it. But Bertie could see there were George and the workmen ahead, and he couldn't stop. George, look out! Shouted Bertie. He braked hard, but it was too late. He crashed through the sign and plunged into the tar. No one was hurt, but Bertie's front axle was broken. You silly little bus, grumbled George. Just then, Thomas arrived with the football team. The coach was cross. Bertie, I've arranged you as a bus service to take us to the football ground, and you have left us behind, he said fiercely. Now Thomas would have taken us to dry-off field because you are completely damaged. I did try to explain to you, Bertie, said Thomas. And he puffed away with the football team, leaving the shameful bus stranded in the middle of the hole. Butch came to take Bertie to the Sodor recovery unit. As Bertie was being repaired, Sir Topham had arrived to see him. Bertie, you have damaged yourself by causing a great deal of trouble. Sorry, sir, said Bertie. Thomas doesn't want to race with me anymore, so I fell out with him. Well, that doesn't mean you have to go off and leave your passengers behind, boomed Sir Topham Hatt sternly. And Thomas was absolutely right. I have warned him about racing at dangerous speed, and that's how accidents happened. Bertie knew Sir Topham Hatt was right. He felt very sorry for himself. A few days later, when Bertie was mended, he came to see Thomas. I'm sorry I fell out with you, Thomas, he said. You were right about the dangerous speed. That's okay, Bertie, said Thomas. We do realize that passengers come first on the Northwestern Railway, not racing. You know, Thomas, Bertie answered, from now on, you and I will race safely while doing our jobs. Good idea, Bertie, agreed Thomas. Like I said before, you are a very good friend indeed.